Hey guys, Chairman here, back with another undefeated locals deck profile. It's been a while since I've done one of these. Been pretty busy, but I figured have some time this weekend, so why not just pump out another deck profile. And this one is for a deck I went 3-0 with a few weeks ago, so it's been a bit, and I made a few minor adjustments to the list, but more or less it's what I played on that day. And it's honestly a really fun deck. One that I wasn't expecting to be this fun to play, and it's actually probably my go-to favorite deck just to play on a any game basis. The floor is very high, and there's a lot of really fun tricks and things you can do with the deck that I find very enjoyable. So this is like my go-to deck to play right now. So yeah, I'm really excited to actually share this with everybody. I think it's very strong. So yeah, I've been having a lot of fun playing this deck. So it is Million Life, and it is the 8 choice build. And I've played the 8 choice build before. I went through various iterations of it, and then I kind of stopped playing it because there was a few things about the deck I didn't like. In particular, I didn't like how it was really hard to get climaxes into hand for the most part with the end game. And I also didn't like how the end game with triple Kaori, you had to discard 6 characters, I believe, 6 music characters, and that was actually kind of hard to do at certain points in the game, especially if you kind of had a not great mid game. You just lacked a lot of resources. So yeah, I just didn't like those aspects of the deck. But the current list, as iterated by a few of my friends in SoCal and myself, fixes a lot of those issues, and now it just feels really smooth. So let's not waste too much time, and let's get straight into the deck list. So first, starting off, we are playing 4 copies of the Sayoko Riki. This is basically a mandatory play for every Million Life deck because the Riki clocks from waiting room, so this guarantees your color. And a lot of Million Life decks are playing 2 to 3 colors pretty early on. There's a lot of really good cards, so you just always play this at 4. Pretty much no question asked. Next, we are playing 4 copies of Kaori level 0. This is one of the main engine cards of the deck, and this is kind of interesting. Million Life has a lot of really strong level 0s, in particular, really good plussing level 0s, cards that are 3-5 power on both turns. And so playing Kaori is kind of a neg because she doesn't have a lot of power, so you're not really winning board with her on at level 0. But what she is offering you is just that ability to get a +1 if you reveal a climax on the top of your deck. So her second effect is the big one. It's when she attacks, you reveal the top card of your deck, and if it's a climax, you just get to search your deck for a music character, and then you shuffle, which means that you shuffle the climax that was on top of your deck is just going to get shuffled away, and you have a higher chance of not triggering a climax again. So, and you also get a +1 while doing it, which is kind of crazy, right? So that's kind of her trade-off. She's low power, so she's really weak, but she can potentially give you this +1. And the +1 is one of the big aspects of this deck, and because triggering climax is really bad a lot of the time, especially the later on in the game you get, the more triggering climax is the worse it is for this deck. And so by using Kaori to kind of hedge your attacks, you just trigger fewer climaxes, and because you trigger fewer climaxes, there's more climaxes in your deck, and you just cancel more often with this deck. The first ability is also Scry. You leave it on top or send it to the waiting room. So generally speaking, I think a really common play with this card is you play the card, and if the top card of your deck is clean, you actually just leave it there. You attack with something else first because you know that's a clean trigger. Then you attack with Kaori second. And if it's a clean trigger, then that means you didn't trigger on the first 2 attacks, which is really good. It means if you trigger climax on the 3rd attack, it's still pretty easy to pay out. And if you did trigger climax with the Kaori while you didn't trigger it, actually you revealed it off the on attack, and then you get your +1 search. Obviously, you can also use the top mill to give you additional information for something like a 5-card Brainstorm. Speaking of which, we are playing 3 copies of the level 0 Brainstorm. This Brainstorm is really good. It's also +1000 power to a level 0 and center slot. It's kind of ridiculous. Yeah, I don't think they were printing this Brainstorm ever again. This Brainstorm is actually kind of cracked. 2 copies of the Reika, Bond to the Flower Stand. This deck is playing Flower Stand. Is one of the best decks to play Flower Stands in. So yeah, that's kind of what she's there for. 2 copies of Climax Swap and Stock Bomb. This card is so good. Oh my gosh, can you imagine a Climax Swap and a Stock Bomb on the same card? How do you run less than 2? I mean, sometimes you can only fit 1, but I think if you can fit 2, you play 2 because the card is freaking crazy. All right, next we're going to talk about these cards together because these are my tech choices. So I'm playing 2 copies of the Roko and 1 copy of the Clean Cut. because I just like the toolbox and tech against opponents, especially in this deck with the Sayoko Riki being able to search any card that we can get from the deck. I like having the option of like, if my opponent gives me a free reverse at level 0, I can search the clean cut and go pretty aggressive, because like you can do something like play Sayoko Riki, get the clean cut, grab the clean cut, and then play the Kaori, and then you can clean cut the Kaori to back row and then attack with the Kaori again, so you get like double value off the Kaori, which is kind of cool. And then obviously if they're playing something like an Aqua or like some kind of on death effect that's really good that you want to reverse, you can just search out a Roko and use the Roko to bottom deck it. Or if you don't have the Roko, you can also search out the Stock Bomb. So I just like having the options to kind of deal with our opponent's board. If you don't care about the toolboxing, you can just play 3 copies of like Takane Runner or something like that. Some plussing level 0 is probably just as good, if not better. I just like the tech options. It's kind of fun. And then 1 copy of the Ami twins. This card is really, really good, especially in this deck. That's why I kind of think it's important to play this as a 1-of. So it's on play if you have 2 or more other music, draw ditch, and then pay 1, discard 1. It's discard a music actually, right? Pay 1, discard a music, top check 3, add anything. So can look up to 4 cards with 2 filter effects. And then the top draw or ditch is really good with the scry of the Kaori, but also with a bunch of other scry effects in this deck. It gives us a lot of control over what we're actually drawing with this card, which is, it kind of fixes the problem of like not being able to get climax. You can just draw it. It's actually kind of crazy. So yeah, that's our level 0 line. Pretty heavy on level 0 just because we want our early game to be really good, and this deck just kind of plays a very consistent early game. Level 1 combo, we're playing the Flower Stand Tsubasa combo. I mean, this is just one of the best, if not the best, level 1 combos in Million Live. Just mills 4, gets to filter hand because you can ditch anything, so it ditches extra climaxes, which is really good. Gets a lot of power. It's 6/5 just on your turn for free for playing the deck. And then also gets to add Flower Stands, like one of the best ways to get Flower Stand into our hands. Alright, 2 copies of this Kana. This is actually basically what the entire deck is based around. This is the innovation that has, in my opinion, just kind of broken the deck. And so let's talk about this card. Every ability on this card is so important. So first ability, if you're level 2 or higher, you can pay 1, send this to waiting room from stage to play the 3/2 Mirai, the TD Mirai from hand. So that's a great way to cheat out the TD Mirai, which I'll talk about it once we get to that card. But yeah, just know that this basically allows us to play the Mirai at level 2 and also pay the stock for the Mirai in stages, right? So instead of paying all the stock at once, we can actually pay 1 to get her on the board and then later pay 1 to get the Mirai on the board without like taking a huge loss. All right, the second thing that this card is assist frontal 1000. It's cross turn, so like that's just really good. It makes our Tsubasa 8/5 with climax. It just buffs our level 0s. The fact that it buffs level 0 is also like really crazy because yeah, it just makes like Roko in the center with a brainstorm like 5/5 like for absolutely no reason. So the 1000 power is really relevant. Also buffs our early plays. And then the last effect is you rest this card, you can look at the top 2 cards of your deck and then rearrange them. And that's just, there's so many plays you can do with that. Like, so if you look at top 2, you see a climax, you just put it second and you attack with Kaori second, right? So clean trigger, then you trigger the climax, but you don't actually, and you get to search, and then voila. And then if you see, obviously if you see like a level 0, you just play Flower Stand, right? So if you guys don't know what Flower Stand is, it's a 1/1 event, salvage anything, and then reveal it. This goes to memory. Reveal the top card of your deck. If it's level 0, it goes to stock for free. So you just play Flower Stand. If you see a 0, you can play Flower Stand. If you see a 1 or higher, I mean, you can just like attack with it. If you see a climax, you attack with the Kaori on that climax turn. If you see a bunch of climaxes, you can either attack with Kaori to shuffle them back, or if you want to hit a really good brainstorm, you can hit a brainstorm. You can just if you see a card that you want to draw, you just play the Mami, you just draw it. Like, there's just so many plays once you know the top 2 cards of your deck, and this deck kind of just capitalizes on all that information, gives you like just all the lines that you could possibly want. So yeah, this Kana basically just unlocks the rest of your deck with the Kaori and the Flower Stand in particular, but there's a bunch of other cards that you can play that also benefit from the top check. Yeah. There's actually a Noriko level 0 that you could also play, but that's better in like a standby or a deck with pants because it needs a climax in play. And this deck doesn't do a good job of looping climaxes as much as other ones, but yeah, so that's why I don't play that card. But if you're playing standby, you're also playing the Noriko. Like, this Kana is actually, it has slowly become one of my favorite cards in Million Live too. And it was just, we like overlooked it when the set first came out, and now I just think this card's nuts. Okay, one copy of Yukiho 1-0. It's just a really good card, level 2 killer, also summons a level 0. In this deck, not as relevant, the level 0 summon, but you can do something like get a brainstorm if you're missing it early. So actually with the Yukiho, you could potentially cut the brainstorm to 2, although I probably wouldn't. And then you can also summon out a Kaori and then attack with the Kaori and then potentially get the search. So it's pretty good. Also just kills level 2s, which is really nice. Alright, speaking of level 2s, at level 2, we're just running 2 copies of the, I think her name's Arisa. I hope her name's Arisa. Yeah, 2 copies of Arisa. This card, when the set first came out, this was seen as the broken card of the set, and I think I've gotten lower on the stocks for this card. It's still really good. It's just like not as unbelievably broken as I thought it was when the set first came out. It's still a very good hand advantage card, but it just turns out that like taking damage kind of sucks. Yeah, you don't really want to take all that damage level 2. It's really good if you're ahead, and it's actually really good if you're behind too. But it like if you're even with your opponent, this card's really bad. Like if you're behind, this card's great because it allows you to catch up at the cost of like taking damage, but you're already behind, so it doesn't matter. Like it helps you generate resources that you would have otherwise lacked. And if you're ahead, you can just heal off the damage really easily, or like taking the damage doesn't matter, so it's really good when you're ahead. But if you're actually even with your opponent, this card, you basically don't play it because like you're trying to find a way to get ahead, and this card doesn't help you get ahead. So yeah, that's why we only run 2. We don't actually really need it, but it is there just in case. And sometimes we do like it. I actually play this more for the power than anything else. We'll play 3 copies of Serika Early Play Healer. This card is garbage, but if we're playing Flower Stands, we're playing Serika. It's like our best way to take advantage of Flower Stand because it's an unconditional healer once we have 2 Flower Stands in memory. Heals, and then also when it reverses level 2 or higher, we can Blind Stalk. Usually it does not get that reverse because it's only 9-5 powered, but in front of Kana, it's 10-5, which is like just big enough to do damage. So yeah, the Kana definitely helps the Serika. We're mostly just playing it for the heal, and we're trying to loop the heal at level 2 with all the resources that we get in this deck. 1 copy of this Noriko 3-2. Basically a must-have in any deck that cares about not losing to like standby and big boards. Bounces, gains 2k cross turn on play, and then top check 3 rearrange. Top check 3 rearrange also just low-key crazy in this deck. You have like a top check 2 rearrange, a top check 3 rearrange, a scry. You just get like all the information you want for your endgame. So like pretty hilarious, honestly. Just so much information, and with that information like comes a lot of like playmaking power, and I really value that because like triggering climaxes just feels like the worst, and in this deck you basically just never trigger climaxes if you don't want to. All right, and in endgame we're playing 4 copies of the Kaori combo. Probably the best generic finisher combo in Million Life. Doesn't kill from range very well, but kills from level 3 basically every single time. It's like a lot of really, the damage numbers are really good, and it's also very cheap in terms of stock. You don't actually need a lot of stock for the endgame combo. It does need a little bit more hand, but that's why we're playing the Mirai to supplement it. So before, the problem with Kaori is that double Kaori is too weak to reliably finish, and triple Kaori requires 6 cards to discard, which is like really rough to get like all the burns. So what you can do in this deck is you can actually just play double Kaori and 1 copy of Mirai, and then give the Mirai all the burns. So the Mirai has a on attack pay 2 ditch 1, and then the ditch 1 can be anything. So you can ditch a climax or an event. So pay 2 ditch 1 burn 1. So it's effectively trading the burn 1 or the ditch 2 burn 1 for a pay 2 ditch 1 burn 1, which is a lot easier resource wise. And then you miss out on the extra cancel burn 2, but I think it's ultimately worth it because it's worth it because we play the Kana early, and then the Kaori, God, I forgot her name already. The Mirai comes out for 1 fewer stock in the grand scheme of things because we already have the Mirai on the Kana on the board. So basically, once we hit level 3, we only need 5 stock if we already have the Kana on the board. So it's like 4 stock for the double Kaori and 1 stock for the Mirai. Obviously, if we have 6 stock and we have triple Kaori, we can just go for triple Kaori and then bank on the cancel burn 2 over like the burn 1. But This also makes it so that we don't have to have triple Kaori. Sometimes that's a little difficult to sculpt, like if our Kaoris are in random places. We don't just like lose a third lane or like a third attacker that's like aggressive. We can just do double Kaori 1 Mirai. So obviously triple Kaori is still better if we can do it, but Mirai just gives us the 5th and 6th attacker. That's also good, and it works really well with our deck. She also comes out early if we decide to sack the Kana early, and she is global 15 to the entire board, which is pretty good in some matchups. And she also has hand encore, so even if our opponent can kill it, as long as they don't hard remove it, she's still staying on the board. Which means that we just have to be really selective on when to summon this out. Generally speaking, you don't want to summon this out at level 2 because most decks will have a way to answer this with like hard removal at level 2. But if you know the matchup well, getting this out early at level 2 can be a great way to snowball the game. But generally speaking, I would say like most games you don't summon this early. Yeah. Alright, and then finally, climax spread, just 8 choice. Pretty standard, that's just what we're playing with the combos. Yeah, and then I think one thing that the Kana also adds is extra soul triggers. So we are running pretty good amount of soul triggers. You can see it's 6, 10, 14 soul triggers with 8 choice. That's actually a very comfortable number. So we usually don't whiff on the choice, which is really nice. Yeah, so generally speaking, like the game flow, we play pretty. I would say we play a fairly defensively early game. Like we don't actually want to try field unless we have the clean cut or something like that, because we don't actually plus at level 0. I mean, unless we hit the top check. But what this deck really aims to do most is like once we get the advantage with the level 1 combo, is that we just don't want to trigger climaxes, and we want to keep as many climaxes in our deck as possible, and the Kaori really helps with that. And by doing that, we just cancel very well in mid game, like more than any other deck. And in the cases where like we would have triggered 1 or 2 climaxes, because of Kaori, we don't trigger any climaxes, and that's huge, right? And so yeah, this deck's really fun to play, especially like in a long tournament where you know that bad luck's gonna screw you over at some point. Like the Kaori just hedges against it, and then the Kana allows you to see like what's gonna happen, so you can like plan around it. So yeah, I think this deck's really fun. I mean, this is probably my go-to deck for just like a long grindy tournament session or play session, because yeah, it raises the floor so much, and you just don't trigger climaxes, which feels really good. I hate triggering climaxes, especially late game when I don't want to, and this deck hardly triggers them. It's very hard for this deck to trigger them, so that's really fun. If you hate triggering climaxes and you want to control that and also get like free pluses, then yeah, you play this deck. This deck is basically the best way to abuse Kaori, in my opinion. There's also another deck where you play 8 standby and like a few similar cards, and similar idea with the Kaori and the Kana that I kind of want to try. It might be better. I think Kaori is actually better in like a standby shell, but I just like being able to play 1k ones. I like the flower stance. The free memory compression is huge. I like being able to loop healer at level 2. Yeah, this deck's really fun. And yeah, if you have Million Life 2, or this kind of idea appeals to you, then yeah, I would suggest you try it out. You can go ahead and proxy it or get into the set if you want to. But yeah, that's it for this week's Undefeated Locals deck profile. Feel free to comment below if you have any questions or what kind of content you want to see me do next. And yeah, I have a few big videos that are just on the back burner. I just haven't had the time to get to them, but hopefully once I get less busy in this holiday season, hopefully we can get those on the table. I'm really excited to get those out to you guys. All right, that's it. Thanks for watching. Peace.